All right, good morning, Canyons. How are you doing today? Fantastic. You look wonderful, okay? Hey, welcome to our final week of our Counterfeit God series, which is all about idolatry. And if you were to go into the Bible and just do an exhaustive study of what God would say about idolatry, you would find there's a pretty clear message. Don't, right? Like just don't do it. And I know this is what you're thinking. This is something I've said every week. Every time we talk about this, our mind immediately goes to the idea of, yeah, this is like an old-time problem. This isn't something that we deal with. This is something from the past. And these parts of the Bible that talk about idols and temples and like bowing down to false gods, that is an archaic premise and something that we don't necessarily struggle with. In fact, it feels like rules and laws from an era gone by. And we're kind of familiar with this. I'm sure you guys have seen on occasion some of the laws that still exist in our nation just from like a long time ago. Like, for example, did you know that you need a permit to wear heels over 2 inches tall in Cardiff by the Sea? Did you know this? Here's the reason why. In the 1920s, women were tripping over like uneven sidewalks and like tree roots on city property. They were suing the city left and right, and you just got to love this government solution. Rather than saying, let's fix the sidewalks and the tree roots, they said, we're going to make you get a permit to wear heels over 2 inches tall. In Washington, D.C., you cannot fly a kite on a city street. Now, it's like, what? Why would that even be a thing? Until you think about it, back in the 1800s when people were in horses, think about how terrified a horse would be at a diving kite, right? It'd just start freaking out. Everybody's like getting trampled on. It'd be a terrible thing. Another one is, any Washingtonians in the room? Okay, good. So I can butcher the name of this county and you guys won't know. In Skamania, Washington, all right? Something I think I had in the 90s, Skamania. Skamania County, Washington, it is illegal to shoot Bigfoot. It's not because like Bigfoot is a protected species. It is because back in the 1960s, hundreds of rednecks showed up into Skamania, Washington, trying to shoot Bigfoot, and they realized we have a real problem on our hand. You get a lot of alcohol and a lot of rednecks out there with guns, and like, we're just gonna make it illegal, which of course sets up a very strange scenario. What if Bigfoot is real and somebody has to shoot Bigfoot to protect their family? I mean, imagine just the TV drama like around this. Okay. In North Carolina, it is illegal to hold a meeting with masks on, which seemed like a pretty reasonable law until 5 or 6 years ago when every one of our meetings was with a mask. But here's the reason why, and it makes perfectly logical sense. They passed this to stop the Ku Klux Klan from meeting anonymously in public, right? So like, you hear this, and sometimes you hear the laws about idolatry in the Bible, and it feels very much like those, where it made sense once upon a time, but it really doesn't have any bearing for us. But the thing is, like, my contention is that idolatry is alive and well. And often what happens is idolatry will sneak into our lives in a very subtle way. Because an idol is just anything that occupies your thoughts more than God. An idol is anything that you will sacrifice to in spite of God. An idol is anything that you will give your worship and your allegiance to other than God. And one of the subtle ways that idolatry will slip into our lives is often a good thing can become an ultimate thing. And whenever a good thing becomes an ultimate thing, ultimately it becomes a bad thing. And the thing is, because it once upon a time was a good thing, you don't even notice that it happened. I mean, just a really obvious and easy one is just take the smartphone, for example. I got my first iPhone in 2009, and back then it was just like a really nice tool. I could check my email, I could get on Facebook. But now, 17 years later, it is the last thing that I touch before I go to bed. It is the first thing that I get in the morning. Studies are showing that our anxiety is through the roof, in part because of our iPhones. It ruins our sleep. It's practically destroyed an entire generation's ability to be present in the moment. And yet, it didn't start off this way. It was something that it was a good thing, but it ended up getting elevated to an ultimate thing. Now, today is not about smartphones. Today is about other things. But that is the anatomy of an idol. When a good thing gets put into the ultimate place, it will enslave you. And 3,500 years ago, the people of God did the exact same thing with a life-saving miracle. Now, much of the series, we have been tracking with the people of God, the children of Israel, as they get let out of Egypt and they're in the wilderness. Now, weeks 3 and 4, we did jump ahead a little bit in the biblical narrative, but this week we are back with these former slaves now in the wilderness as they head towards the promised land. And today we're going to be reading in Numbers 21, and then we're going to jump ahead a couple books. But if you want to follow along, we're going to be in the Old Testament book of Numbers. It's in the Old Testament. In fact, it's really close to the beginning. So if you start there and just start going a little bit to the right, you will eventually get there, and we will be in the 21st chapter. Now, we're also going to have the verses on the screens if you want to follow along that way, or you're always invited to use your phone to look it up that way. So here we go. Numbers 21, starting in verse 4. It says, "Then the people of Israel set out from Mount Or, taking the road to the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom." All right, so they're going around the land. "But the people grew impatient with the long journey, and they began to speak against God and Moses. 'Why have you brought us out of Egypt to die here in the wilderness?' they complained. 'There is nothing to eat here, there is nothing to drink, and we hate this horrible manna.'" So what they're saying is, we don't want to go the long way. We want to go straight there. We should have never left Egypt. And you know what? While we're talking about this, there is nothing to eat. All right? Now, in fairness, God's been giving us manna every day for the last, long time, but we hate it. We're done with it. And that's their contention. Now, a few thoughts here. I don't know about you. I also can get frustrated at a long trip. The last 4 years, our family has driven from California to see my family in Kansas. And I know what you're thinking. Wow, we are impressed. But not like the good kind of impressed, kind of like the, I did not know people still did that. Both driving the whole way as well as going to Kansas. So it's funny because a lot of people from Kansas will fly to San Diego for vacation. We talk about it. I think we're the only San Diegans who go to Kansas for our vacation. People come here, they're like, let's go check out La Jolla Cove. We're like, I hear there's an alfalfa field. Let's go see it. But here's the thing that you might actually be impressed by, is when we drive to Kansas, we do not stop. We do the whole trip in one fell swoop. And what I mean by this is we don't stop for hotels. We don't stop to eat. We pack all of our food. The only stops we make are to fill up and to use the restroom. It's gotten to the place where my kids have favorite gas stations along the way. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's a Love's. Let's stop, And we also, Jen and I, we have this arrangement where, if we leave 2 or 3 in the afternoon, I'll drive until 11 or usually midnight, and then Jen will drive until 12:30 or 12:45, okay? I joke, but at the same time, there was one time where, I stopped driving at midnight. I'm like, all right, hey, if you can take until 4 o'clock, that would really help me so I can get a little bit of sleep. She's like, no problem. And what I meant by this was, can you drive the next 4 hours? What I didn't realize is that we jumped from Pacific time to Mountain time. She was like, it is 4 o'clock, your turn. I'm like, oh, what is going on? So let that just be hope for all of you, that if our marriage could survive that, you can get through anything, okay? So that said, I get it. There are points along a journey where you're like, no more. I remember one time when we lived in Ventura and we were driving back home, we hit Barstow at 4 a.m., and there was bumper-to-bumper traffic in Barstow at 4 a.m. And you're like, what is this place? What is going on here? And the amount of frustration in the vehicle, it was palpable. Now, when you hit that level of exhaustion, and many of you have been there, it's not that you say things that you don't believe. That's not the problem. You fully believe the things that you say. You say things that you wish you didn't. Have you been in that place where you're like, oh, I fully stand by what I said, but I wish that hadn't come out of my mouth, right? And that's what's happening with the Israelites on this journey. It's not that they're saying things that they just don't actually believe. It's just they're saying things that they just maybe wish that they didn't. And what they're doing is they're railing against God. Now, one of the culprits they use is that they hate the taste of manna. But it's not really that they hate manna, because manna tastes like honey cakes. That sounds pretty good to me. It's that they're upset with God. and a food that they've eaten for the last 40 years is like an easy culprit. Because like this wasn't day 28, it wasn't day 29, this was day 14,000 of the journey. See, just a quick understanding of like what happens with this whole thing. They're released from their slavery in Egypt. And almost immediately, the Hebrew people are like, man, we don't trust God, we don't trust Moses, we don't think this is gonna work. They send spies into the promised land and they come back with this report, like, we're like grasshoppers, they're gonna defeat us like crazy, like there's no way we're gonna take the land. And God says, no, this generation's gonna pass and this new generation's gonna take it. If you guys aren't gonna trust me to fight your battles for you, if you're not gonna believe me and you're not gonna trust the leadership that I've put in place, then I'll give you what you want. So you're not going to get the promised land. Your kids are going to get into the promised land. And so who's saying that they would be better off in Egypt? At this point, it's not the people who had ever experienced it. It was the children of the people who experienced it. Their moms and dads, they lived in bondage to these cruel masters, masters who practiced infanticide, masters who worked them 7 days a week, masters who abused them and like practiced strict racism towards them. And like moms and dads, just listen to me for a second. This is not what today's about, but just listen to me for a second. Don't be surprised when your unhealed issues become your kids' inheritance. The Israelites, they had a pattern of looking back at their old days and saying, oh, those were the good old days. Not because those days were good. It's because those days offered something that they thought they were missing in this moment. Because they're like, we used to have certainty, like I knew what tomorrow was going to look like, and today we're not 100% sure what we're going to do. Like, are we going to be in this location or are we going to be in that location? They had some stability of like, we know who's going to be our boss, and it just seems like every day that we're walking on this journey that we're not actually getting there. And what they did is they started to romanticize a past that did not actually exist. And God's like, no, this is about trust. This is you willing to believe me when I say just take the next step. Just go to where I want you to go. I'm going to provide for you. I'm going to be the source of everything that you need. And he does this through all sorts of miracles, but miracles that they didn't have any control over. I mean, let's just look at the manna situation for a second. Like, you can frame it one way of, oh my gosh, we've had nothing but manna to eat for the last 40 years. Or you could frame it another way. Every day for the last 40 years, you never had to actually go and find food. You never had to get to a grocery store. You never had to hunt an animal. God miraculously brought bread down every single day. I mean, this would be like you getting a deposit anonymously every day for like $20 in your bank account, okay? Where it's like, it's not enough to live on. It's not like enough for you to say, oh yeah, I can retire on this. But I mean, how cool would that be? Just every day, you just get a little bit more in this. And what God is trying to say is, I don't want you to be obsessed with this idea of how can you control your environment. I want you to be obsessed with the idea that I promise I will take care of you. And not just will I take care of you, I have a track record of doing this. But what they do is they complain about the length of the journey. They look back at Egypt and they start saying, man, I think things were better back then. And this is a generation that never actually experienced this. So God does what any good parent would do in this situation. He sends a bunch of venomous snakes into the camp to bite them and make them really sick, okay? Now you can imagine though, like this gets their attention like that. And they realize, hey, we screwed up. And they run to Moses and they say, hey, Moses, like we have sinned against God. We've sinned against you. Can you please pray to God that he will remove the snakes? And so here's what God does. In verse 8, it says, then the Lord told him, make a replica of a poisonous snake and attach it to a pole. All who are bitten are going to live if they simply look at it. And just like circle, highlight, underline the word look. We'll come back to that in a minute. So Moses made a snake out of bronze and he attached it to a pole. Then anyone who was bitten by a snake could look at the bronze snake and be healed. Like I said, we're going to talk about that more in a minute. But this is a pretty normal solution to a snake problem, I guess. Just put a bronze one on top of a pole. But you might be wondering, like, why would God say this is the right way to fix this? I'm glad you asked. Like, there's a lot of layers to this. Did you know that the front of Pharaoh's hat had a particular animal on it? Now, if you can think back to that episode of DuckTales when they fought off the mummy and he had like the Pharaoh's garb on, you might know what animal it is. I've also set you up for it. It is a snake, right? So he put Pharaoh's cap has a snake on the front of his hat. And in that world, especially in Egypt and the Near East, the snake was a symbol. It was a symbol of resurrection. It was a symbol of immortality and healing. And what God was doing in this moment, he was sending the snakes into the camp to remind them, Pharaoh is not your friend. The Egyptians are not your friends. You think this will solve your problems. You go back there, it will bite you. And so God tells him, like, I want you to craft a bronze snake, and I want you to lift it up on a pole, let everybody look at it, and then find their healing. But he doesn't do this because the snake is the symbol of healing. That's not why he does this. What he wants to do is he wants to use the symbol of their curse as the source of their healing. And the pole that he lifts up the bronze snake on, it's not just any kind of pole. It's actually like a military standard. So if you've seen Braveheart, you might remember at the very end of the film, hate to ruin it for you, but William Wallace dies. And it talks about how they quarter his body and they send it to the four corners of Scotland as like, hey, a warning to everybody, like don't mess with the English. Well, that was something that happened, 700-800 years ago, but it was also something that definitely happened 3,500 years ago. In fact, mankind has kind of been doing this for a long time. And the pole that they put the bronze serpent up on is one of those poles. Kind of like we have defeated our enemy. We have put him up as a warning and as a notice to everyone else, don't mess with us. So what's happening here is it's an announcement. God is victorious over what is hurting you. The false gods, the false leaders, they're going to bow and surrender to one true God. And like I said, that word look is also important. So this is an important piece of information just like embedded in the passage. The first thing they're supposed to do when they get bit by a snake is they're to look at the snake. And in verse 8, it's a very common definition of look. It's just like literally like, your eyes just kind of look at it. But then as you go from verse 8 to verse 9, the Hebrew writers, they switch the word from look to a completely different word, the Hebrew word nabat, which actually means an intense and expectant gaze. It means you're not just looking at the bronze snake, you're actually looking through the bronze snake. What the people who are reading this and hearing this understood, and that we will understand right now too, is what God is asking them to do is not just to simply look at it, it's to look through it, at who has commissioned the crafting of the snake. The power is not in the symbol, the power is in the one who commissioned the symbol. The statue is a proxy for something more powerful. That only by looking through it and seeing the God behind it could you actually find the healing. And so at the end of this whole affair, like people get bit, they look up at the snake, they're healed. You have an example of a group of people whose hearts were owned by something else. They were blind to the enslavement that they had. And if you remember from the very first week of this series, one of the things we talked about was God brought down the 10 plagues onto Egypt, not just because he needed to have almost like military level power to break them free from their physical enslavement. He does it because each one is systematically destroying one of the false gods that the Egyptians would worship, because he wanted to send a message. I am more powerful than all these other things that you have worshiped. But what we have discovered is that although physically they have been left from their slavery, now their hearts are still like caught up. And God's having to still use these symbols of power and might to try and break them from their spiritual slavery. But the story of the bronze snake is actually about to take a really weird turn. Because if you jump forward in time 700 years, the Israelites have now fractured into two kingdoms. You have the southern kingdom of Judah, and it's being led by a man by the name of Hezekiah. Now, for the most part, Hezekiah was actually a pretty good king, with just a couple of exceptions. One of which is when he started his reign over Judah, his nation was a vassal state to the Assyrians. And at this point in history, the Assyrians were like the big boys on the block. This was the kingdom that wrecked the northern tribe or the northern tribes, and exiled all those people. And Hezekiah, he desperately wants to get out of being underneath the Assyrians' thumb. And so what he does is he contacts the Egyptians and he says, I need your help. Now, if he had gone to God, God would have said, you don't need to trust in any other nation. I want you to put your trust and your hope in me. I will protect you. I will get you out from underneath the Assyrians. But he doesn't actually believe that yet. And so he looks at his circumstances, he looks at what is common in that day and age, and he says, I'm going to do what everyone else does. And he says, I need the Egyptians' help. 700 years after they are freed from their slavery, the Judeans are going back to Egypt for help. And even 700 years later, do you want to guess what animal still represents Egyptian might and strength? It's still the snake. And in verse 4 of 2 Kings chapter 18, it says, talking about Hezekiah, he removed the pagan shrines, he smashed the sacred pillars, and he cut down the Asherah poles. And the reason why he does this is because Hezekiah has suddenly had like this come to Jesus moment. Not literally because Jesus hadn't come yet, but he has this moment where he's like, I got to get this thing fixed. Like I can't keep doing all the things that I used to. I need to follow God intensely with my whole heart because the relationship with the Egyptians kind of goes south. And it says he broke up the bronze serpent that Moses had made because the people of Israel had been offering sacrifices to it. The bronze serpent was called Nehushtan. So what's been happening with this bronze snake 700 years later? The people of Israel, they took the snake that at one point represented God is more powerful than the Egyptians. It has brought us healing. And they've turned it into a god. People are now making sacrifices to it. And there's a really strict irony here that 700 years earlier, people were looking at this for healing, and now they're looking at it and they're saying, this is our new master. And the people in Hezekiah's day had completely lost the lesson that had been learned 700 years earlier. And the reason why they're doing this is because for the Israelites, the Judeans, as they're trying to curry favor with the Egyptians, they're like, if we can have some sort of symbol that shows that we align with you, like, let's pull it out. So what they do is they go and they find the snake because this represents Egypt. And they said, no, this has always been part of our story. This has been part of our history. Like, this is what we worship as well. And they start making all of these different sacrifices. And what we see happening here is we have something that started off as a good thing. I mean, this was the statue that was commissioned by God, made by Moses, that brought healing to thousands of people. And now it is the symbol of an enslavement. What this is a good thing that has become an ultimate thing. And we're liable to do this with almost anything. Good things so easily become ultimate things. Your spouse is a good thing, but they can easily become the ultimate thing in your life. Your kids, same thing, a good thing, but they can become an ultimate thing. Almost all good things can be turned into an ultimate thing if we're just left uninhibited. Now, there's one area in particular that we're most likely to do this with, and that is just the idea of money. See, money in and of itself is not an evil thing. Like, having money does not make a person bad or evil. Even being rich is not a symbol of like, oh, that person is evil and we have to stay away. It's not like a symbol of a corrupted conscience. And it's funny because I have met so many people that when it comes to this idea of greed, I will meet people who are incredibly wealthy and they have built great businesses or they've just been very successful in their careers or maybe they've even inherited money. But what you learn is that these are not greedy people. That they don't worship money, they don't love money more than anything else. They see it as a tool, and God has blessed them in an incredible way. And I also know people who struggle to make ends meet, but money is like the most important thing in their life. And even though they don't have a lot of it, they are enslaved to the idea of money. What I'm trying to say is money is just a tool. It is not the end-all, be-all. It is just something that God has given us to do things with. And what I see is that money is a way that God often blesses us, that all good gifts ultimately come from him, and often, not always, but often, he will bless us materially. So when I talk about this, what I don't want you to hear is that, oh, money is bad, being poor is good. Sometimes, but not always. Like the Judeans, we can take a good thing given by God as a blessing, and we can turn it into a curse. Here's Jesus' words in Matthew 6. We read the Luke version of this last week, but here's the Matthew version. It says, no one can serve two masters, because you're going to hate one and you're going to love the other. You're going to be devoted to one and you're going to despise the other. You cannot serve God and be enslaved to money. This is a verse that is all full of worship meaning. Like I said, it's not that money is bad, it's that idolatry is bad. It's that when money becomes an ultimate thing, it becomes a bad thing. So here's how you can know if money rules your heart. I'm going to give you 3 quick diagnostic questions that you can just kind of ask, like, hey, is this gone from a good thing to an ultimate thing? The first is the anxiety test. See, when your finances take a hit, that you have an unexpected bill, a bad quarter at work, maybe a drop in the market, what happens to your soul? Like, nobody likes losing money, but does it ruin your afternoon, or does it cause a crisis where you're like, I don't even know who I am anymore? And if a momentary dip in the economy causes an existential crisis of security, money is probably no longer a tool. It is probably the savior of your heart. Here's the second test, the sacrifice test. What are you willing to burn on the altar just to get a little bit more of it? Will you sacrifice your integrity to get just a little bit more money? Maybe it's lying to a client. Maybe it is just cheating a little bit on your taxes. Maybe it's just lying a little bit to your boss to get that promotion. Like, are you willing to sacrifice your integrity just to get a little bit more of it? Will you sacrifice your family or your kids? Will you sacrifice your well-being? Will you skip all rest because, like, I just need more of it? See, the thing is, like, we will only sacrifice the things that we love for the things that we worship. Like, normally you don't sacrifice things that you love for things you don't care about. But you will sacrifice things that you love when there is a God on the other side. And if you're willing to burn up your family, your physical health, all for the bank account, you're bowing to a different master. Here's the third test you can give yourself, the generosity test. If God asks you to give some of it away, does your hand instinctively go into a clenched fist? Does the idea of, like, a radical generosity, does it make you feel physically unsafe? If giving away your money feels like giving away your actual life, then money is no longer just a good thing in your life. It has been elevated to an ultimate thing. You aren't holding your money is holding you. And see, when money becomes our God, we end up looking just like these ancient Israelites. We're standing in the middle of God's miraculous provision, and we're burning incense to the altar of a bronze snake, desperately hoping it's going to protect us. And so within the story, Hezekiah eventually realizes, I cannot trust the Egyptians. And he recommits his leadership to God. And in that moment, what he does, and we read about, is that he destroys the bronze snake. And the thing is, like, that actually takes a lot more courage than you might think, because nobody was respected more in the ancient Jewish world than Moses. Like, Moses was, like, at the very top. Imagine how shocking it would be if we saw, like, one of our elected officials walk out with the original Gettysburg Address and just, like, light it on fire. Like, that's how we would feel about the destruction of something like this. And it seems really extreme unless you realize this is no longer a good thing. This is something that is enslaving our people. This is a counterfeit God. And Hezekiah's strategy for getting free from Nehushtan is actually a perfect game plan for us as well, because he destroys it not just one way, but in 2 different ways. The first is he destroys it physically. Like, he literally destroys the statue. Like, if you know what your idol is, and it's not something that, like, you need to survive, or it's not, like, just a good thing that needs to be put back in its place, it's not always a bad idea to just get rid of it. It's kind of like clearing out all the junk food from your house when you know you're going to go on a diet. Or if you're like, I'm going to get sober, it is like standing over the sink and, like, pouring out all the alcohol in your house. So you're just not tempted to go back to it. Like, physically removing the opportunity to cheat, removing the opportunity to sin or to worship at the foot of a counterfeit god. Those are actually good things. And back to the topic of money, there's actually a really clear pathway for how to help yourself get over the worship of money, and that's start giving away. And here's what's amazing: you don't even have to give all of it away. You just have to give just enough to where it starts to hurt a little bit. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, of course, the pastor's talking about giving us money, right? There's two things that are true. The first is, our church does exist our church is able to survive because of the generosity of people, a lot of people that are in this room. But there's another side of this that is also equally true. We don't need your money. God takes care of us one way or another. If you read the story of the Old Testament, you see, as they're going through the wilderness, they don't have anything to drink, God just brings water out of a rock. In the New Testament, one of Jesus' best friends says, I don't have money to pay my taxes. Jesus says, go fishing. All right, so he goes fishing. He literally catches a fish, and there's a coin in the fish's mouth. I can't tell you all of the times since I've been here the last 3 years, we've had a financial need, and God provides it. Sometimes with people in the church, sometimes outside of the church. I can't explain this. But here's what I know. I don't actually need you to write Canyons a church for our church to survive. So this is not a play on my end to try and get you to do something with this. The reason why I bring this up is because ultimately this is a good thing for you. I will say this. Generosity has become one of the catalysts in my life for spiritual growth. I am convinced that out of all the habits that I have in my life, praying, reading the Bible, hanging out with other people, the thing that's been probably the most impactful for me in my growth has been that automatic payment every single month online from my bank account to our church. And the reason why is because I am somebody else who loves money. And if I don't watch myself, I will start to bow down to money. And I will start thinking, how can I get more of it? What can I do with this? How can I spend it on myself? I go through all those same things. And every month, whenever we send our money, I feel my hand going from a clenched fist to an expression of God, you can have it all. And just so you know, I'm not saying this to brag. I just want you to know, I'm practicing what I preach. Jen and I, we give more than 10% of our income to the church because I believe quite strongly that God still calls us to support the church, even with 10% of our income. And I don't do some weird math of my time is money and I work for the church. No, I literally I get a check and then I'm we're going to send it right back. And the reason why I do is because I'm convinced that God has used this in an incredible way, that the 90% left is more blessed than the 100% if we keep it all. And I've seen how God has grown my faith, that he has provided for us, that he has given us materially things that we need. He has blessed us with all sorts of relationships and all sorts of things. And I believe that one of the catalysts for that is because we have said, our life is open to you, God. You can have it if you wish. And I'm convinced that you should also give away your money. Not necessarily to me, but you should live with an open hand and just see what God does with it. See how he grows you in your faith. See how you go from every month scared, how is he going to provide? How's he going to provide? To I see him doing this all the time. And like I said, if you're ever convinced, nah, Matt's just all about my money, give somewhere else. I do not care. You probably passed 2 or 3 other great churches on your way here. Write a check to them. Don't even tell me which one. Just trust God with your money and see what he does. Just last thing I'll say on this part, consider doing what we call the 90-day tithe challenge. Just for the next 90 days, try living off of 90% and giving the other 10% away and just put God to the test. See what he does. And this is exactly what Hezekiah does. He destroys the thing that has captivated the people's hearts. He says, I'm going to put it all back on God. I'm going to trust that he will take care of us. I'm going to trust him with the security of our nation. I'm going to trust him with the worship of our people. So he destroys it physically, but he also destroys it a second way. He destroys it psychologically. This is something that we don't get because we don't speak Hebrew, but he names the snake Nehushtan. I'm going to butcher this. Nehushtan just means bronze. And just by adding that little suffix of on to it to make it Nehushtan, what he's done is he has reframed what it is for everybody. Literally in the Hebrew, what it means is that bronze thing. It goes from this point of like, oh, we should sacrifice, we should give to this. It is the symbol of our protection to, it's just that bronze thing. And I'm convinced that this is another way that we should try and get over the counterfeit gods that seem to like entrap us, is that we should reframe it. So we catastrophize whenever we have a financial difficulty, right? We take a bad month, we take a dip in the economy, and we'll say things like, I am ruined, I am broke. I mean, just take a step back and listen to the words that are coming out of your mouth. What you want to do instead is you want to reframe it. The math is bad. This is not looking great, but I trust God to provide for us. You know, that can be true whenever there's like legitimate turns, but that can also be true in some of the ways that like greed just kind of like creeps up into our life. That you might be thinking, oh man, I know the car I'm got right now is great. I just need a new one. Oh, I got to have it. Sometimes you reframe it psychologically. I don't need a new car. I've got new car fever. I just feel like I've got to have it even though I don't. Or you might need to like tell yourself, I don't actually need to move into a larger home. I've got like little man, like big house. Like I just need to like reframe this. Or if I do this, I'm going to be luxury poor. If I go and I buy this and I have to put it on a credit card and I'm never actually going to pay it off just to make other people respect me, I'm just not going to do it. You have to reframe it. You have to change how it looks for you psychologically. Because this is how insidious good things that become ultimate things will become. You will convince yourself, oh, this is worthy. Oh, this is what I should be like turning to. Oh, this will make me a person. This will make me who I am. And God wants you to know, your identity does not come from these good things that you've put in an ultimate place. Your identity comes from the fact that you are a person that is made in the image and likeness of God, that he was literally willing to lay down the life of his own child for, to bring you into his family, that you are a son and daughter of the King. That when something bad happens in your life, even financially, that doesn't reframe who you are. You're not this failure that nobody loves and nobody respects. You are a child of God who God loves and respects, and he wants to bring you closer into his relationship. You know, in 700 years after all of these moments with Hezekiah, Jesus is meeting with a Pharisee by the name of Nicodemus. And they're going back and forth on what Jesus' significance was going to be and what God wants people to do. And Jesus drops this bomb on Nicodemus that he does not understand in the moment. He says, hey, you're going to have to be born again. And Nicodemus, of course, is like, I don't know what that means. And so what Jesus explains is, our old selves need to die. That part of us that allows our hearts to be seduced and taken captive, that's got to go by the wayside. We can't keep living this way. Idolatry is going to bloody you, and it's going to leave us for dead. But Jesus wants something better and different for us. And during that conversation with Nicodemus, he says this to him. And as Moses lifted up the bronze snake on a pole in the wilderness, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, so that everyone who believes in him will have eternal life. In the desert, the Israelites had to look at an image of the curse that they had just experienced that had brought them so much pain. They had to look at that image to be healed. And Jesus is pointing to the day in the very near future for Nicodemus when he would be lifted up, not on a military standard, but on a wooden cross, but has the same symbol and meaning. And on that cross, he would become sin in body. He would become the curse that has hurt us, left us bloodied, and left for dead so many times. He becomes the curse for us. He absorbs the venom of our sin and our idolatry. In the same way that people would look up at the snake, and they would recognize that God was going to heal them. What they didn't know was that our ultimate healing was going to be coming when God's Son would literally lay his life down for us. See, the real way to break the curse of any counterfeit God in your life is to look to the Son of God. And remember, it's not just a casual glance, right? It's not just looking, it is nabat. It is fixing our expectant gaze on him. It is worshiping someone better. It's recognizing that the idol that we've got has no promise to me. It cannot deliver what it says it can give. But it's only through Jesus that we can find the purpose and the satisfaction that we crave. See, the idol of money is going to demand that you sacrifice yourself for it, but Jesus is the true and better God who sacrificed himself for you. And so I'm inviting you, stop looking at all these other things that you have put in that position of ultimate and look to Christ and Christ alone. If you would, just bow your head and close your eyes. God, I want to pray for the people in this room right now, that as we are kind of hopefully confronting the different gods that we have placed in our life, whether it's success, pride, sex, relationships, certainty, safety, security, whatever it is, like even good things that we have lifted into the place of ultimate things, whether it's money, God, that you would free us from that we would not be taken captive by these false promises of gods that just cannot deliver. That God, I pray for courage amongst those who call themselves followers of Jesus in this room to say that, God, we're going to worship you and you alone, that we may have chased our old passions, but God, we are now chasing you. That God, I pray for those who may be on like the fence right now of, am I going to believe this or am I not? That God, you would put this prayer on their lips and in their heart, that I'm asking you to forgive me of my sin and take full control of my life. That God, I want to look to you lifted on that cross and know that you are the symbol, you are the hope, you are the thing that has brought me ultimate healing and ultimate purpose in my life. God, you're the only one who can. But God, you are the source of our salvation. You are the source of our identity. And so God, I pray that we'd stop relying on ourselves and that we would trust in you and you alone. And I pray this in your son Jesus' name. Amen.